Part 1. The Unseen Presence. The huge pines that surrounded the old remote house that belonged to my family were rustling in the breeze. The sound of the rustling leaves reminded me of trees whispering to one another. We have a wooded retreat where I always find comfort, but tonight was different. There was a light scratching sound to begin with. I was reading in my room when the noise started to enter my awareness. I initially thought it was just the typical creatures that scurried through the woods at night, but it kept coming and got louder and more intentional. I walked over to the window and peered out into the starry woodland as a feeling of unease crept up my spine. The air was filled with an ominous energy as shadows danced through the trees. Looking for the source of that unsettling sound, my eyes tried to make sense of the pitch blackness. As I watched, a flicker of movement caught my attention. There, amidst the shifting shadows, a pair of eyes gleamed like twin orbs of burning coal. They stared back at me, unblinking, reflecting the pale moonlight. My heart raced, and I blinked, half expecting the apparition to vanish, but the eyes persisted, fixated on me with a vengeful intensity that made my skin tingle. I drew back from the window and pulled the curtains closed as panic swept through me. The question, what was that? I mumbled to myself as I kept staring out the now closed window. My thoughts were racing as I tried to make sense of what I had witnessed. Perhaps it was just a lighting illusion or a wild animal. I made the decision to continue my investigation and carefully descended the steps. The quiet house resonated with every creak of the wooden floor beneath my feet. In the suffocating silence, the loud ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hallway like a drumbeat. I paused as I approached the front door. Should I travel into the pitch-black woods to face whatever awaited there? I was filled with fear, but I had to find out the truth. I took a deep breath before turning the handle and leaving the porch. The moon created unsettling shadows on the ground, and the night air was cold. I strained my eyes, observing the woods, alertness of the senses. Although the scratching noise had stopped, the eyes never left my mind. I had no idea that this would be the start of a perilous adventure that would take me even further into the depths of the darkness that lurked in the woods behind my house. Part 2. The Unseen Threat. The next night was agitated, with fits of sleep and terrifying dreams. I kept picturing the eyes in the trees, like a creature eagerly awaiting its meal. I made up my mind to explore the woods during the day in an effort to uncover the enigma. As soon as morning came, I gathered my tools, a pocket knife, a torch, and my smartphone in case of any unforeseen situations. As I stealthily crept out the back door and into the woodland, my family was still sound asleep. The woodlands seemed serene and inviting as they were drenched in the soft sunlight. Overhead, birds sang as a gentle breeze ruffled the foliage. It was difficult to imagine that I had experienced terror only a few hours earlier. I went down the same road that my eyes had travelled the night before, the road that took me to the spot where those unsettling eyes had stared at me. With each stride, the feeling of impending doom grew stronger. The once sacred forests now appeared to be a maze of shadows. I saw slight changes in the terrain as I went deeper. Broken branches, ripped leaves, and odd etchings in the tree bark are all visible. It appeared as though something far bigger than any typical woodland creature had been moving through the forest with a purpose. As I approached a clearing, a tiny natural amphitheatre among the trees, my heart began to race. I witnessed a sight in the centre that chilled my bones. Strange symbols were hastily drawn in the ground in a circle, with bones and feathers lying around it. It was a ghastly scene, and my sensation of dread grew. I walked up to the symbols and gave them a close look. They were ancient and strange, unlike anything I had ever seen. Questions were racing through my head, but they were cut off by a low growl that filled the air. I whirled around and peered into the thick undergrowth with my flashlight. The roar reappeared, this time closer. The same evil eyes from the previous night reappeared in the shadows, and my heart froze. They glistened with hatred and greed. I lurched backward in a fit of panic when my flashlight started to dim. With the darkness still obscuring its form, the thing inched closer. I felt a rush of fear as it let forth a grotesque, inhuman snarl. I immediately understood that I needed to hide in order to get away from the woods and the evil force that resided there. The creature's howls echoed in my ears as I turned and raced, branches ripping at my clothing. I dare not turn back for fear of what I might see as I dashed back into the protection of my backyard from the tree line. My heart was racing. I could still hear the creature's growls in the distance, and I was becoming more and more convinced that there was something evil at work in the woods that I didn't comprehend. Part 3. Unraveling the Darkness. I had been horrified and shaken after the encounter with the thing in the woods. My every waking moment was tormented by its eyes, which burned with malice. I started looking up the symbols I had discovered in the clearing because I realized I couldn't continue to live in terror. As I combed through antiquated books and obscure websites in search of any information regarding the markings, days turned into nights. It was a trek into the uncharted and a descent into the paranormal. I stumbled into an old folktale one evening. It mentioned a being, a sentinel or protector of the forest, bound by a potent curse. According to legend, the markings in the clearing served as a type of warding intended to keep the beast confined, a perilous and forbidding ceremony that has only been carried out by a select few desperate people, was described in the tale as having the power to free the beast. The presence I had sensed in the woods might be the result of someone releasing this evil force, I realized as I was reading. I contacted a local historian who was well known for his knowledge of folklore because I was determined to find out more. He agreed to meet me one rainy night at a cafe with low lighting. My worry increased with each raindrop that splattered against the window. A scruffy man with a wild beard and piercing eyes, the historian, showed up. As I described my experiences and showed him the symbols I had uncovered, he listened closely. With each passing second, his demeanor grew more gloomy. Finally, he said, "You found something you ought to have left alone. Those symbols do serve as a kind of containment, but they fall short. The beast was never intended to be kept at bay for very long." He continued by saying that the woodland was home to a curse that was intrinsic to the earth itself. The beast was simply a manifestation of the ancient evil that had crept into this place over many years. It grew stronger with each meeting, feeding on hopelessness and terror. I started to feel desperate. To undo the rite that had released the beast, I needed to figure out how to seal it once more. Reluctantly, the historian consented to assist. He gave me incantations and directions, cautioning me of the risk involved in the task. We returned to the woods that fateful night as the moon rose, armed with candles, salt, and the wisdom passed down through the generations. With each stride, the air seemed to get heavier and more oppressive. We arrived at the clearing where the earthen symbols were engraved. I started the incantation with quivering hands, the words ringing with powerful antiquity. With a hoarse voice, the historian joined in. As we chanted, the ground underneath us appeared to quake, and then the thing appeared in front of us in a flash of unnatural light. Once filled with malice, its eyes now held a beseeching despair. The beast let out a spine-chilling cry as it vanished into a swirling vortex of darkness with the last words of the incantation. The monster was sealed back into the earth, where it belonged, by the symbol's brilliant brilliance. We were worn out and frightened, but we also realized that our actions had repercussions. The curse of the forest persisted, and the evil presence will always linger in the underbrush. That evening, as I made my way back to my house, I couldn't help but feel as though the creature's eyes, albeit temporarily gone, were still watching from the shadows. Both the woods and I would never be the same again. Part 4. The Lingering Shadows. An eerie silence descended over the woods behind my house after our encounter with the dangerous beast. The ancient magic of the symbols in the clearing, which were still present, managed to keep the thing at bay once more. However, the curse that had pervaded the region for ages continued to hang in the air, serving as a continual reminder of the gloom that lingered around. The horrors we had experienced had changed the local historian and I for the rest of our lives. We didn't talk about that night much because we felt like doing so may somehow welcome the evil energy back into our life. It was a deeply held secret that both of us shared. I believed that I had overcome my hardest situation as the weeks evolved into months, but the forest had a long memory, and I continued to dream about the beast. Its eerie growls would awaken me in a cold sweat, coming from the shadows of my room. I went back to the forest one evening because I could no longer handle my terror. The clearing's symbols were still there, their radiance dim yet apparent. I came to terms with the fact that the creature will always be a part of this location. I took a seat amidst the symbols and quietly apologized to the area and the being we had disturbed. The atmosphere became oppressive, and I sensed a presence, one of resignation rather than malice. It seems as though the monster had accepted that it would spend all of time in this horrible place. I had an insight as I was sitting there. The creature was a sign of a greater darkness, not the underlying evil of the forest. Its anguish came from the curse that engulfed this area, and as long as it persisted, the creature would continue to suffer. I rediscovered my resolve and started looking into ways to reverse the curse. I knew it would be a dangerous voyage, but I had to stop the evil power from lingering in the woods. I discovered the cause of the curse, a hostile spirit offended by the behavior of individuals who had previously lived in this land, through ancient rites and sacrifices. I approached the spirit with caution, apologizing for my actions and looking for a means of calming its wrath. There was no denying the spirit's fury, yet it gradually started to back down. The secret to breaking the curse was revealed in it, a solemn promise to safeguard and preserve the forest for future generations. I took the oath with a heavy heart, pledging to be a steward of the land, to protect it from damage, and to see that the evil force would never be allowed to be let loose once more. The spirit's influence diminished, leaving me with a heavy burden of responsibility. Years went by, and I kept my word, putting in endless effort to safeguard the forests behind my house. The evil being, originally a sign of impending doom, evolved into a kind of protector, a warning of the darkness that would appear if nature were to be disregarded. Although the curse persisted, it was no longer as all-pervasive and evil as it once was. The forests flourished, and their mysteries were kept a secret, awaiting discovery by the adventurous and curious. My story ends here, but the woods behind my house continue to be inextricably linked to the paranormal. It serves as a sobering reminder that certain mysteries are best left unsolved, and that the shadowy evil may be a result of our own deeds. The line between the normal and the supernatural is frequently blurry, and that interfering with the unknown can have terrible, far-reaching effects.